Hello, delightful makers. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the Weathervane block. And the skill that we are going to focus on for this block is fussy cutting. So here you can see in the center, I have this cute little rooster. This was fussy cut from this larger piece of fabric. So this piece of fabric has all these cute little chickens and houses and trees. And so we are going to practice fussy cutting these images out. If I just cut this at 3.5 inches, then I might end up with something weird like that in the center of my block. So let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about fussy cutting for our project. I want this kind of chubby little chicken here, and I have my ruler. Now I am cutting the chicken at 3.5 by 3.5. That is the piece that I need to go inside the center of my block. So I have on my ruler here placed a piece of washi tape at the 3.5 by 3.5 mark. Now it looks a little weird based on the measurements here because this ruler basically shows the seam allowance on the edges, which is helpful for this type of cutting because I know when I cut out my chicken that I don't want to have it on this edge here, because this is actually going to be the seam allowance. So having that border helps me to center where that chicken's going to be. Now, because I don't have that border here, I know that this line and this line is where my seam allowance is because this is my 1/4 inch. But I'm going to be cutting along these lines here and this outside edge here. So basically the chicken is 3 by 3. That is what I need to focus on. So I'm going to make sure the chicken is centered where I want it. And so within this 3 by 3 frame, she's about 1/4 inch on the sides, and she's about 1/4 inch from the top and the bottom. So I'm going to cut here and here. And now I'm going to rotate my mat, and I'm going to place the edges of my tape, because this is where my cut needs to be, my 3.5 mark. So I'm gonna place the edges of my tape on the edges of that cut here and that cut here, so you can kind of see if I move that out of the way. So now this is going to be my 3.5 by 3.5 inch square. There's 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here, so that's 3.5 by 3.5. So now I'm just going to cut the other side. So here I have my little chicken, and if I place her on the mat, you can see that she is 3.5 by 3.5, and this is going to be piece F for the block. It's the center piece, but you can see how she's nicely centered. So that is the skill that I want you to practice. I want you to practice fussy cutting out your center piece, keeping in mind that seam allowance around all 4 edges. Your next step will be to take your B and C, and you are going to make 8 at a time half square triangles. So draw, this is the right side of B, this is the wrong side. You're going to draw
2 diagonal lines making an X across B, and then place the right sides together. And then we will sew on either side of the drawn line. So we will sew a line, 2 lines going this way, 2 lines going that way. If you need a more detailed tutorial for 8 at a time half square triangles, the link is located below in the description. All right, so we have stitched on either side of our drawn lines. So we have 4 stitched lines, 2 going this way and 2 going this way. Now for this, I do recommend a rotating mat so you don't have to pick up and move your fabric. But if you don't, try to move around your cutting table or try to move your fabric as little as possible. So the first thing that we are going to do is cut down the centers horizontally. And then we're going to cut across the center going the other direction. This is, actually that was vertically, this is horizontally, or because I rotated the mat, they're all vertical. So I have cut straight across both directions, and now I'm going to cut on the diagonal on that line that I drew, going that direction and going this direction. And that gives me 8 half square triangles. I will now press these and trim them to size.
Okay, so now that we have finished our half square triangles, we're going to place those off to the side and finish the rest of the unit that will go with this. So we have D and we have A, and we're going to do 4 of these. So we have 4D, and then we're going to take 4A. Now I have a lot more in my stack because there are a lot of A's, but I'm going to need 4 A's, and I'm going to draw a line on the back of that, and then I'm going to place the A on top of the D, and I'm going to do a sew and flip with the diagonal going from the top left to the bottom right. So I will stitch on that line, trim, and then press this open so that I have 4 pieces that look like this. All right, so I have my D and A pieces. Now these I did press towards D. That's going to help me nest some points later on. So if you want your points to line up really pretty in this block, I recommend pressing towards D. And now we're going to make this little unit. So we're going to use one of these, an A square, and then we're going to use one of the half square rectangles, sorry, half square triangles, and we're going to put them together like this. So we're going to sew the A to the top of the half square triangle, and then we will sew that row or column to the DA unit, and it will make this. We'll do this 4 times. So we will make 4 with our 4 half square triangles and our 4 DA units. The next step is going to be to make the blades. So we have 4 E squares and we have 8 A squares, and we are going to sew and flip the A squares onto the E squares to create the little blade. So the first thing that we will do is place the A square on top with the diagonal line going from the bottom left to the top right. We will stitch that, trim it, press it open. Then we will do the other side with the diagonal line going from the top left to the bottom right, we will stitch, trim, press, and that will give us this little blade shape. We will do that with all 4 E-squares. All right, so now that we have made all of our units, we're going to put them together into the block. So this is our little Fussy Cut chicken. It's piece F, so it's 3.5 by 3.5. And then I have my blades, which will go like this around the chicken. And then I have this unit that I made, and those are going to go in the corners like this. So we're going to sew this row together, and then we will sew this row together, and then we will sew this row together, and then we'll sew the whole thing into a block. All right, so there is the final block. I actually have made 2 of these. So we're going to take these 2 blocks and we're going to practice our fussy cutting some more with a panel, and then we will turn them into a table runner. You can find the cutting instructions in the description below, but this is a really fun block. I used very similar colors, and they're kind of busy, especially all these big flowers. So really, you kind of just get the overall shape of the block, and then when you look closely, you see the cute little chicken hiding in there. But if you did completely different colors and had very contrasting colors, like the blue flowers here could be a purple and these could be a pink, then you will get a completely different look for your block. So that is one thing about this Weathervane block, is it is very simple to make. You can always fussy cut this center square to give you something fun and kind of cute in the middle, but you don't have to. And if you create a block with colors that contrast more than what I have here, you're going to get some really cool designs and shapes in your Weathervane block. All right, so this is the Weathervane block in the table runner. That tutorial is linked below in the description. Thanks to Benartex for the fabric Farm Feathered Folk for this tutorial. Now it's your turn. Go make something beautiful.